The salty breeze whipped across Tom's weathered face as he guided his small fishing boat back towards the harbor of Seaside Cove. The sun was just beginning to dip below the horizon, painting the sky in vibrant hues of orange and pink. It had been a long day out on the water, but his nets were full, and Tom was looking forward to a quiet evening at home. As he neared the shoreline, a brilliant flash of light suddenly illuminated the darkening sky. Tom squinted, his hand instinctively shielding his eyes from the intense glare. For a moment, he thought it might be a meteor, but the light moved erratically, zigzagging across the heavens before plummeting towards the earth with frightening speed. What in the world? Tom muttered to himself, his heart racing as he watched the object disappear behind the tree line of the dense forest that bordered the northern edge of town. A dull boom echoed across the water, and a plume of smoke began to rise above the trees. Without hesitation, Tom changed course, steering his boat towards the small, secluded beach near where the object had crashed. As he approached the shore, he could see a faint glow emanating from within the forest. Curiosity and concern battled within him as he moored his boat and began to make his way through the underbrush. The forest was eerily quiet, save for the crunch of leaves beneath Tom's feet and the distant sound of waves lapping against the shore. As he drew closer to the crash site, the air grew thick with an acrid, electrical smell that made his nose wrinkle. Pushing through a dense thicket, Tom suddenly found himself on the edge of a small clearing. What he saw there made him freeze in his tracks. A sleek, metallic object about the size of a car lay half buried in the soft earth. It was unlike any aircraft Tom had ever seen, its surface smooth and seamless, with no visible windows or doors. A soft, pulsating light emanated from within, casting an otherworldly glow across the clearing. But it wasn't the craft that held Tom's attention. It was the figure that emerged from it. At first glance, she appeared to be a young woman, perhaps in her early 20s. But as Tom's eyes adjusted to the strange light, he realized there was something profoundly different about her. Her skin had a faint, silvery sheen to it, almost as if it were reflecting the moonlight. Her hair, long and flowing, seemed to shift colors as she moved, transitioning from deep purple to midnight blue. And her eyes, they were what truly gave her away as something not of this world. Large and almond-shaped, they glowed with an inner light, their irises a swirling kaleidoscope of colors that seemed to change with each blink. The alien woman, for Tom was now certain that's what she was, stumbled as she exited her craft. She was clearly injured, one hand pressed against her side where a strange, luminescent fluid seeped between her fingers. Tom's instinct to help overrode his shock and fear. He rushed forward, catching the woman just as her knees buckled beneath her. "Easy there," he said softly, supporting her weight. "I've got you." The alien woman's eyes locked onto his, and Tom felt a jolt run through him, as if he'd been struck by lightning. In that moment, he knew with absolute certainty that his life would never be the same. "Thank you," she said, her voice melodic and slightly accented. I didn't know if I would find help here." Tom helped her sit on a fallen log, his mind reeling as he tried to process what was happening. "Who are you? Where did you come from?" The woman winced, adjusting her position to take pressure off her wound. "My name is Zara. I've come from, well, I suppose you would call it another world, a planet far from here." Tom nodded slowly, still struggling to believe what he was seeing and hearing. "And why are you here? Was this some kind of accident?" Zara's expression darkened, her kaleidoscope eyes flashing with what Tom recognized as fear. "No, not an accident. I'm running, fleeing. There are others, they're coming. And if they find me, if they find your world, everything will change." A chill ran down Tom's spine at her words. "Others? You mean more aliens? Are they like you?" Zara shook her head vehemently. "No, they are different, dangerous. They seek to conquer, to dominate. I couldn't stay silent anymore, couldn't be a part of their plans. So I fled, hoping to find a world that could stand against them. A world like yours." Tom's head was spinning. Aliens, invaders, It all seemed too fantastical to be real. And yet, here was Zara, undeniably not of this earth, sitting before him and warning of an impending threat. "We need to tell someone," Tom said, his voice hoarse. "The authorities, the military, someone who can do something about this." Zara's hand shot out, gripping Tom's arm with surprising strength. "No, please, you can't. Not yet. If word spreads too quickly, if the wrong people find out about me, it could alert them to my presence here. We need time to prepare, to plan." Tom hesitated, torn between his duty as a citizen and the pleading look in Zara's otherworldly eyes. Finally, he nodded. "All right. For now, we keep this between us. But you're hurt, and you can't stay out here in the woods. My place isn't far. Do you think you can walk?" Zara nodded, allowing Tom to help her to her feet. As they began to make their way through the forest, Tom couldn't shake the feeling that he was making either the best or worst decision of his life. The walk back to Tom's small cabin on the outskirts of town was slow and arduous. Zara leaned heavily on him, her breathing labored, and Tom found himself acutely aware of how different she felt. Her skin was cooler than a human's, and there was a faint vibration, almost like a hum, emanating from her body. As they approached the cabin, Tom felt a wave of relief wash over him. The lights were off, and there was no sign of activity from his neighbors. With any luck, they could get inside without being seen. Once inside, Tom helped Zara to the couch and quickly drew the curtains. He turned to find her examining her surroundings with obvious curiosity, her kaleidoscope eyes taking in every detail of his modest home. "I know it's not much," Tom said, suddenly feeling self-conscious. Zara shook her head, a small smile playing at her lips. "It's wonderful. So different from anything I've known. Thank you for bringing me here." Tom nodded, then gestured to her wound. "We should take care of that. I have a first aid kit, but I'm not sure if it'll work for someone like you." Zara's smile widened slightly. "Your medicines won't be necessary. My body heals differently than yours. I just need rest and—" She paused, looking slightly embarrassed. "Perhaps some water. The journey here was long, and your planet's atmosphere is different from what I'm used to." Tom quickly fetched a glass of water, which Zara drank gratefully. As she did, he took the opportunity to really look at her. In the soft light of his living room, her alien nature was even more apparent. Her skin seemed to shimmer faintly, and he could now see that what he had taken for hair was actually more like fine, iridescent filaments that moved of their own accord. "So," Tom said, settling into an armchair across from her, "you said others are coming. How much time do we have?" Zara's expression grew serious. "I'm not certain. Days, perhaps. A week at most. They'll have tracked my ship's energy signature. Once they realize I've made contact with your world, they'll come in force." Tom ran a hand through his hair, feeling overwhelmed. "And what exactly are we supposed to do against an alien invasion? I'm just a fisherman, Zara. I don't know the first thing about fighting off extraterrestrials." Zara leaned forward, her eyes intense. "You underestimate yourselves. Your people, humans, you have a strength, a resilience that my kind often lack. You adapt, you innovate. It's why I chose to come here. With the right preparation, the right knowledge, you have a chance." Tom wanted to believe her, but the enormity of what she was suggesting was almost too much to comprehend. "Even if that's true, how am I supposed to convince anyone? You saw how you look. If I start telling people an alien crashed in the woods and a hostile invasion is coming, they'll think I've lost my mind." Zara was quiet for a moment, her gaze distant. Perhaps we can find a way to prove my existence, to show your people the truth without causing panic. But we must be careful. If word spreads too quickly, it may reach the wrong ears." Tom nodded slowly, his mind racing. "All right, we'll figure something out. But for now, you need to rest and recover. You can take my bed. I'll sleep out here on the couch." Zara looked like she wanted to protest, but exhaustion was clearly taking its toll. She allowed Tom to help her to the bedroom, settling onto the bed with a grateful sigh. As Tom turned to leave, Zara called out softly, "Tom, thank you. For helping me, for believing me. I know this must be difficult to accept." Tom paused in the doorway, looking back at the alien woman who had so suddenly upended his quiet life. "Yeah, well, my grandpa always said the universe was full of mysteries. Guess he was more right than he knew." With that, he closed the door, leaving Zara to rest. Tom made his way back to the living room, his mind whirling with everything that had happened. As he settled onto the couch, staring up at the ceiling, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. Outside, the night was quiet, the stars twinkling peacefully in the sky above Seaside Cove. But somewhere out there, beyond those stars, something was coming. And Tom knew that when it arrived, nothing would ever be the same again. The early morning sunlight filtered through the curtains, rousing Tom from a fitful sleep. For a moment, he lay on the couch, disoriented, wondering why he wasn't in his bed. Then the events of the previous night came rushing back, and he sat up with a start. Zara. The crash. The warning of impending invasion. Tom rubbed his eyes, part of him still hoping it had all been some bizarre dream. But as he stood and made his way to the bedroom door, he knew the truth. Knocking softly, he called out, "Zara? Are you awake?" There was no response. Cautiously, Tom opened the door, peering inside. The bed was empty, the covers neatly made. For a heart-stopping moment, he thought she might have left, taking with her any chance he had of proving he wasn't losing his mind. Then he heard a soft humming coming from the kitchen. Tom found Zara standing by the window, her iridescent hair shifting colors in the morning light. She turned as he entered, and Tom was struck again by how otherworldly she looked. Her wound from the night before seemed to have healed completely, leaving no trace. "Good morning, Tom," Zara said, her melodic voice tinged with curiosity. "I hope you don't mind, but I was examining your food preparation area. The devices you use are fascinating." Tom couldn't help but chuckle. "It's just a kitchen, Zara, nothing special." Zara's kaleidoscope eyes sparkled with interest. "Perhaps not to you, but to me, it's a window into your world, your way of life. It's all so different from what I'm used to." As Tom set about making coffee and scrambling some eggs, he found himself peppered with questions from Zara. She was intensely curious about every aspect of human life, from the mechanics of the stove to the cultural significance of sharing meals. It wasn't until they were seated at the small kitchen table, Zara cautiously tasting her first bite of scrambled egg, that Tom broached the subject they'd been avoiding. "So," he said, setting down his coffee mug, "what's our next move? We can't just sit here waiting for an alien invasion." Zara's expression grew serious. "You're right. We need to start preparing, gathering allies. But we must be careful. If we move too quickly, cause too much of a stir, it could alert my pursuers to my presence here." Tom nodded, his brow furrowed in thought. "I have a friend in town, Zara. She works for the local newspaper. If anyone can help us spread the word quietly, it's her. But Zara, how do we prove to her that you're real? That this isn't some elaborate hoax?" Zara was quiet for a moment, her eyes swirling with conflicting emotions. Finally, she said, "I may be able to demonstrate some abilities that are beyond human capability. But Tom, you must understand the risk. Once we begin to reveal my existence, there's no going back." Tom reached across the table, hesitating for just a moment before placing his hand over Zara's. Her skin was cool to the touch, with that strange, subtle vibration he'd noticed before. "I understand, but we don't have a choice. We need help." With a plan in mind, Tom and Zara set out for town. They had decided it would be best for Zara to remain hidden for now, so Tom had lent her some of his clothes, a hoodie and sunglasses to conceal her most alien features. Even so, as they walked down the main street of Seaside Cove, Tom could feel curious glances being cast their way. The Seaside Sentinel, the town's small newspaper office, was housed in a weathered building near the harbor. As they approached, Tom saw Sarah through the window, hunched over her desk with a look of intense concentration on her face. "Wait here," Tom told Zara, gesturing to a bench outside the office. "Let me talk to her first." Zara nodded, taking a seat and pulling the hood lower over her face. Tom took a deep breath, steeling himself for what was sure to be a difficult conversation, and entered the office. The bell above the door jingled, causing Sarah to look up from her work. Her face broke into a warm smile when she saw Tom. "Well, if it isn't the elusive fisherman himself, to what do I owe the pleasure, Tom?" Tom managed a weak smile in return. "Hey, Sarah. Got a minute? There's something I need to talk to you about. Something big." Sarah's journalistic instincts kicked in immediately, her eyes sharpening with interest. "Sure, Tom. What's going on?" For the next 10 minutes, Tom laid out everything that had happened: the crash, finding Zara, her warnings of an impending invasion. As he spoke, he could see the disbelief growing in Sarah's eyes, quickly followed by concern. When he finished, Sarah was quiet for a long moment. Finally, she said, "Tom, you know how this sounds, right? I mean, aliens, an invasion, it's crazy." Tom finished for her. "I know. But Sarah, I swear to you, I'm not making this up, and I can prove it." He turned towards the door. "Zara, can you come in here?" The bell jingled again as Zara entered the office. Slowly, cautiously, she lowered her hood and removed the sunglasses. Sarah's eyes widened, her mouth falling open in shock as she took in Zara's alien features. "Oh my God," Sarah breathed. You're really..." Zara nodded. "I am not of your world, and I'm afraid I bring grave news." For the next hour, Zara explained her situation in more detail, her flight from her own people, the threat they posed, and why she had chosen Earth as her refuge. Sarah listened intently, her reporter's notebook forgotten on the desk as she absorbed the incredible story. This is huge," Sarah said when Zara had finished. "I mean, this changes everything. The whole world needs to know about this." "No," Zara said sharply, her eyes flashing with urgency. "We cannot allow this information to spread too quickly. If it does, my pursuers will know exactly where to find me. We need time to prepare." Sarah looked conflicted, torn between her duty as a journalist and the obvious fear in Zara's voice. "Then what do you want me to do?" Tom leaned forward. "We need your help to spread the word quietly. To find people we can trust, people who can help us prepare for what's coming. Can you do that?" Sarah nodded slowly. I think so. I have contacts in the local government, the police force, people who might believe us, who could help without causing a panic." As they discussed their next steps, none of them noticed the figure watching from across the street. Officer Jake Miller had been on his usual patrol when he'd spotted Tom and the strange woman entering the newspaper office. Curiosity piqued, he decided to keep an eye on the situation. Now, as he watched through the window, he could clearly see the alien woman's features. His hand instinctively went to his radio, but he hesitated. This was too big, too strange to simply call in. He needed to know more. As Jake continued to observe, strange things began to happen around town. The local electronics store reported all of their devices mysteriously activating at once, displaying strange symbols before shutting down. Fishermen out on the water swore they saw lights moving beneath the waves, too fast and too organized to be any known sea life. And in the sky, for just a moment, some claimed to have seen a massive shape blot out the stars before vanishing as quickly as it had appeared. Back in the newspaper office, Zara suddenly stiffened, her eyes going wide. "They're here," she whispered, her voice filled with dread. "Advanced scouts. They're searching for me." Tom and Sarah exchanged alarmed looks. "What do we do?" Tom asked, fighting to keep his voice calm. Zara closed her eyes, concentrating. "I can mask my presence for a time, but we need to move, to find somewhere safer, somewhere we can begin to mount a defense." As they prepared to leave the office, the door burst open. Officer Jake stood there, his hand on his holstered weapon, eyes wide as he took in the scene before him. "Nobody move," he said, his voice shaking slightly. I don't know what's going on here, but I think you all have some explaining to do. Tom raised his hands slowly, stepping in front of Zara. Jake, I know this looks bad, but you need to listen to us. The situation is more complicated than you can imagine. Jake's eyes darted between Tom, Sarah, and Zara, confusion and fear warring on his face. An explanation, now. As Tom began to speak, trying to summarize the incredible situation as quickly and calmly as possible, Zara's attention was drawn to the window. In the sky above Seaside Cove, a faint shimmer was becoming visible, the telltale sign of a cloaking device struggling to maintain its integrity in Earth's atmosphere. They were running out of time. Zara stepped forward, ignoring Jake's startled command to stay back. "Officer," she said, her voice carrying an otherworldly resonance that made Jake's hair stand on end. "I know you have no reason to trust us, but right now, the fate of your world may depend on it. Please, lower your weapon. Let us explain." For a tense moment, Jake's hand remained on his gun. Then, slowly he relaxed his posture. "All right," he said, his voice still wary. "Start talking." As Zara began to recount her story once more, Tom moved to the window, his eyes scanning the sky. The strange shimmer Zara had noticed was growing more pronounced, and in the streets below, he could see people pointing upward, their faces masks of confusion and fear. The truth was about to become impossible to hide, and Tom knew that when it did, the real challenge would begin. Humanity's fight for survival was about to start in earnest, and Seaside Cove would be ground zero. The atmosphere in the small newspaper office was thick with tension as Zara finished explaining the situation to Officer Jake. Outside, the strange shimmer in the sky had become impossible to ignore, drawing more and more curious onlookers into the streets of Seaside Cove. Jake ran a hand through his hair, his face a mix of disbelief and growing acceptance. I don't even have words for what this is, but if what you're saying is true, we need to act fast." Tom nodded, relieved that Jake seemed to be coming around. "Exactly, but we can't cause a panic. We need to organize, prepare as much as we can before the truth gets out." Sarah, who had been furiously taking notes, looked up from her notebook. "I have an idea. The old bunker up on Miller's Point. It was built during the Cold War, but it's been abandoned for years. It could be a good place to set up a base of operations somewhere off the grid." Zara's eyes lit up. "Yes, that could work. I may be able to use some of the technology from my ship to fortify it, to create a safe haven." Jake held up a hand. "Hold on. We're talking about commandeering a government facility. That's not exactly legal." "Neither is an alien invasion," Tom countered. "Sometimes you have to bend the rules to save lives." After a moment of internal struggle, Jake nodded. "All right, I'm in, but we do this smart." "Sarah, can you get us the keys to that bunker without raising suspicion?" Sarah grinned. "Please, I've been covering town council meetings for years. I know where every skeleton is buried in this town. Give me an hour." As Sarah set off on her mission, Tom, Jake, and Zara began to formulate a plan. They would need supplies, weapons, and most importantly, allies they could trust. Jake provided a list of fellow officers and local veterans he believed would be open to their incredible story. Tom thought of his friend Mike, who worked at the local hardware store. Mike's got access to all kinds of tools and materials. If we're going to fortify that bunker, we'll need his help. Zara nodded. "Good, and I'll need to retrieve some components from my ship. The technology that could give us a significant advantage." As they continued to plan, a commotion outside drew their attention. The shimmer in the sky had coalesced into a more definite shape, a massive, disc-like object hovering silently above the town. People were pouring into the streets now, phones out, pointing and shouting in a mixture of awe and fear. Jake's radio crackled to life, dispatch calling all available units to respond to the growing crowd. He silenced it with a grimace. "We're out of time. We need to move now." Tom turned to Zara. "Can you do anything to buy us some time?" "To distract them." Zara's brow furrowed in concentration. "Perhaps, but it will reveal my presence here. Are you sure? Tom nodded grimly. We don't have a choice. Do it. Zara closed her eyes, her body beginning to emit a soft, pulsating glow. Outside, the air seemed to thicken, and a low hum filled the town. Suddenly, every electronic device in Seaside Cove, from smartphones to car radios, began to emit a piercing, otherworldly tone. As the townspeople clutched their ears in confusion and discomfort, the massive ship above shimmered and vanished, as if it had never been there at all. It's done, Zara said, her voice strained. I've disrupted their cloaking technology and scrambled local communications. But it won't last long. We need to move quickly. The next few hours passed in a blur of frantic activity. Sarah returned with the keys to the bunker, and the small group began to quietly spread the word to those they trusted most. Mike from the hardware store was skeptical at first, but the sight of Zara and the lingering effects of her technological disruption convinced him quickly enough. By nightfall, a small but determined group had gathered at the old bunker on Miller's Point. Tom looked around at the assembled faces. Jake and a handful of his most trusted officers, Mike and his employees from the hardware store, Sarah, and a couple of her more adventurous interns, and a mix of local veterans and concerned citizens who had been brave enough to believe the incredible story. As Zara worked to set up the alien technology she had salvaged from her ship, Tom addressed the group. I know this is all hard to believe. Hell, I'm still having trouble believing it myself, but the threat is real, and it's coming whether we're ready or not. This isn't just about our town anymore. What we do here in the next few days could determine the fate of our entire world. A murmur ran through the crowd, a mix of fear and determination. Jake stepped forward, Tom's right, with a first line of defense. We may be a small town, but we're not going down without a fight. As the group began to organize themselves, dividing into teams focused on fortification, communication, and defense, Zara approached Tom. Your people are impressive, she said softly. In the face of such an overwhelming threat, many would simply give up. But they're rallying, preparing to fight. Tom managed a small smile. Yeah, well, humans can be pretty stubborn when we need to be. How are the defenses coming? Zara's expression turned serious. I've managed to establish a basic energy shield around the bunker. It should mask our presence and provide some protection against their weapons. But Tom, there's something you need to understand. The force that's coming, they're not just going to land and start shooting. They're smarter than that. What do you mean? Tom asked, a sense of unease growing in his gut. They'll try to divide us first, Zara explained. To turn human against human. They'll spread misinformation, create confusion and fear. It's how they've conquered other worlds. By the time the real invasion begins, the population is often too fractured to mount an effective resistance. Tom's jaw clenched. Then we need to get ahead of it. Sarah, he called out, waving the reporter over. We need to set up a communication network, something they can't easily interrupt. Get the word out about what's really happening. Sarah nodded, her eyes sparkling with determination. I'm on it. We can use the old ham radio network, set up a system of coded messages. It's low-tech, but that might actually work in our favor. As Sarah set off to organize the communication team, a commotion near the bunker's entrance caught Tom's attention. Mike burst in, out of breath and wide-eyed. You guys need to see this, he panted. It's all over the news. The group gathered around a small TV someone had brought to the bunker. Every channel was showing the same footage, shaky, handheld video of strange, shadowy figures moving through the streets of major cities around the world. The news anchors were trying to maintain calm, but the fear in their voices was palpable. It's starting, Zara said quietly. The infiltration. Jake turned to her, his face grim. How long do we have before the real invasion begins? Zara shook her head. It's hard to say. Days, maybe. A week at most. They'll want to sow as much chaos as possible before they make their real move. Tom looked around at the determined faces of his unlikely allies. Then we've got work to do. Jake, start training everyone on basic combat techniques. Mike, I need you to focus on fortifying this place, make it as defensible as possible. Sarah, get that communication network up and running. We need to connect with other resistance groups that might be forming. As the group dispersed to their tasks, Tom turned back to Zara. What about you? What can you do to help us prepare? Zara's eyes glowed with a fierce determination. I can teach you about their weaknesses, their battle strategies. And there's something else. A weapon I've been developing. It's not perfected yet, but if I can finish it, it might give us a fighting chance. Tom nodded. Do it. Whatever you need, just ask. As Zara set to work, Tom stepped outside the bunker, looking out over the twinkling lights of Seaside Cove below. The town seemed so peaceful, so unaware of the storm that was about to break over it. He thought of all the people down there, his friends, his neighbors, going about their lives, blissfully ignorant of the danger lurking just beyond the stars. A fierce protectiveness welled up inside him. This was his home, his world, and he'd be damned if he'd let some alien invaders take it without a fight. Inside the bunker, the atmosphere was one of focused intensity. Jake drilled small groups on hand-to-hand combat and basic weapons training. Mike and his team worked tirelessly to reinforce walls and set up defensive positions. Sarah's voice could be heard, crackling over the ham radio, making contact with other pockets of resistance around the country. And in a makeshift lab, Zara bent over her work, her hands moving with inhuman speed as she pieced together the weapon that might be humanity's last hope. As dawn broke over Seaside Cove, Tom looked out at his ragtag group of defenders. They were tired, scared, but determined. In just a few short days, they had transformed from ordinary townsfolk into the front line of Earth's defense. But would it be enough? The sky began to lighten, the stars fading one by one. But one light remained, growing brighter by the moment. Tom's heart sank as he realized what it was. They're here, he said, his voice carrying across the suddenly silent bunker. It's time. The once peaceful sky above Seaside Cove now blazed with an otherworldly light as the massive alien ship descended through the atmosphere. Its size was staggering, dwarfing even the largest human aircraft carriers. As it approached, smaller craft began to detach from its hull, streaking towards the Earth like deadly shooting stars. Inside the bunker, Tom turned to face his unlikely army. Fear was evident on every face, but beneath it burned a fierce determination. This is it, he said, his voice steady despite the terror clawing at his own heart. Everything we've prepared for. Remember, we're not just fighting for ourselves, but for everyone on this planet. Jake stepped forward, his police uniform replaced with makeshift combat gear. Alpha Team with me. We'll take the western approach. Beta Team, cover the east. Remember your training and watch each other's backs. As the defenders moved to their positions, Zara approached Tom, her alien features setting grim resolve. In her hands, she carried a device unlike anything Tom had ever seen, sleek, almost organic in its design, pulsing with an inner light. It's finished, she said. The weapon. It's not as powerful as I'd hoped, but it should disrupt their shield technology. It might give us a fighting chance. Tom nodded, taking the device from her. It was surprisingly light, humming softly in his hands. How does it work? Point and think, Zara explained. It's keyed to your brainwaves now. But be careful, it has a limited charge. Use it wisely. Before Tom could respond, the bunker shook with a tremendous impact. Outside, the air filled with the scream of energy weapons and the thunderous explosions of return fire. The battle for Earth had begun. Tom raced to the bunker's entrance, Zara close behind. The scene that greeted them was one of chaos and destruction. The alien forces had landed on the outskirts of town, their sleek, insectoid battle suits, allowing them to move with terrifying speed and agility. But the defenders of Seaside Cove were giving as good as they got. Jake and his team had set up a defensive line, using overturned cars and hastily constructed barricades as cover. They poured fire into the advancing alien ranks, their determination making up for what they lacked in advanced weaponry. Mike and his crew had rigged improvised explosive devices throughout the area, which now detonated in carefully timed sequences, throwing the alien advance into disarray. And above it all, Sarah's voice crackled over the radio network, coordinating the town's defense and broadcasting updates to resistance cells across the country. Seaside Cove is under attack, she reported, her voice steady despite the chaos. But we're holding the line. To anyone who can hear this, the invasion has begun. Stand your ground. Fight back. Humanity will not fall today. Tom raised Zara's weapon, aiming at a group of advancing aliens. He focused his thoughts, willing the device to activate. A pulse of energy burst forth, striking the lead alien's shield. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, with a sound like shattering glass, the shield collapsed. Jake and his team didn't waste the opportunity, concentrating their fire on the now vulnerable invader. As the alien fell, a cheer went up from the human defenders. "It works," Tom shouted to Zara. "We can beat them." But their elation was short-lived. From the main ship, a new wave of attackers descended, larger, more heavily armored than the first. They moved with a cold, mechanical precision that sent chills down Tom's spine. "Fall back," he yelled, realizing they were outmatched in the open. "Back to the bunker. We need to regroup." As the defenders retreated, laying down covering fire, Tom saw Mike fall, clutching his leg. Without hesitation, Tom rushed forward, firing Zara's weapon to clear a path. He reached Mike, hoisting the larger man up with a grunt of effort. "I've got you, buddy," he said through gritted teeth. "We're getting out of here." They had almost reached the bunker when a massive alien, easily twice Tom's size, landed before them with an earth-shaking impact. Its armor gleamed in the firelit night, energy weapon humming as it took aim. Time seemed to slow. Tom knew he couldn't raise Zara's weapon in time. He closed his eyes, bracing for the end. But the killing shot never came. Instead, a battle cry filled the air, primal, defiant, and utterly human. Tom's eyes snapped open to see Sarah, of all people, charging the alien with nothing but a makeshift spear. The sheer audacity of her attack seemed to confuse the invader for a crucial moment. That moment was all Zara needed. She appeared as if from nowhere, her hands glowing with otherworldly energy. She placed her palms on the alien's armor, and there was a blinding flash. When Tom's vision cleared, the alien lay still, its armor smoking. "Get inside," Zara shouted, helping Tom with Mike. "I can't hold them off forever." As they retreated into the bunker, sealing the heavy doors behind them, Tom finally had a moment to catch his breath. The makeshift infirmary was already filling up with wounded, the air thick with the smell of blood and scorched flesh. But as he looked around at the faces of his fellow defenders, tired, scared, but unbroken, he felt a surge of pride. "Status report," he called out, helping Mike onto a cot. Jake approached, his face streaked with soot and sweat. "We've lost the outer perimeter, but the bunker's holding. For now. We took down a fair number of them, but," he trailed off, shaking his head. "But there's always more," Zara finished for him. She looked exhausted, the glow of her skin dimmed. "They won't stop. This is just the first wave." Sarah limped over, still clutching her makeshift spear. "I've been in contact with other resistance groups. It's not just us. They're hitting major cities all over the world. But we're not alone in fighting back. There are reports of successful counterattacks in some areas." Tom nodded, trying to process the information. Okay, we can work with this. Jake, get our people patched up as best you can. We'll need everyone ready for the next round. Sarah, keep that communication line open. If we can coordinate with other groups, we might be able to. He was cut off by a deafening boom that shook the entire bunker. Dust rained down from the ceiling, and the lights flickered ominously. "They're trying to breach the bunker," Zara said, her eyes wide. "The shield won't hold forever." Tom's mind raced. They were cornered, outgunned, and running out of options. But as he looked around at the determined faces of his friends and neighbors, he knew they weren't beaten yet. "Zara," he said, an idea forming. "Your ship. You said it was damaged, but not destroyed. Is there any way we could use it?" Zara's eyes lit up with understanding. Yes. If I can get back to it, I might be able to reactivate its defense systems. It's not much, but it could turn the tide." "It's too dangerous," Jake protested. "They'll be watching for any attempt to leave the bunker." "Which is why they won't be expecting it," Tom countered. He turned to Sarah. "Can you create a distraction? Something big enough to draw their attention?" Sarah grinned, a mischievous glint in her eye. "Oh, I think I can manage that. Give me 10 minutes and every speaker in town will be blasting the final countdown at full volume." Despite the dire situation, Tom couldn't help but laugh. "Perfect. Jake, I need you to hold the bunker. No matter what happens, don't let them in." Jake nodded sullenly. "We'll hold. Just come back in one piece, all right?" Tom turned to Zara. "Looks like we're going on a field trip. You ready?" Zara's expression was one of fierce determination. Let's remind these invaders why they should have left Earth alone. As Sarah set off to prepare her musical distraction, Tom and Zara geared up for their desperate mission. The weight of responsibility pressed heavily on Tom's shoulders. He knew that what they were about to attempt could very well determine the fate of not just Seaside Cove, but the entire world. Outside, the alien forces continued their relentless assault on the bunker. The shield flickered and wavered under the onslaught, but held, a testament to Zara's advanced technology and the sheer stubbornness of human engineering. Tom took a deep breath, steeling himself for what was to come. He looked at Zara, this alien woman who had risked everything to warn them, who now stood ready to fight alongside humanity against her own kind. "Whatever happens out there," he said softly, "I'm glad you crashed in our little town." Zara's kaleidoscope eyes shimmered with emotion. "As am I, Tom. Your world, your people, you're worth fighting for." The bunker shook again, more violently this time. They were running out of time. "All right, Sarah," Tom said into his radio. "It's now or never. Hit it." For a moment, all was quiet. Then suddenly, the opening riff of the final countdown blasted through every speaker, car stereo, and cell phone in Seaside Cove. The sheer volume was overwhelming, echoing off buildings and rattling windows. In the confusion that followed, Tom and Zara slipped out of a hidden exit, using the cover of night and the distraction of the music to make their way towards the forest where Zara's ship lay hidden. As they ran, dodging energy blasts and leaping over debris, Tom allowed himself a moment of hope. If they could just reach the ship, if Zara could reactivate its systems, they might have a chance. The fate of Earth hung in the balance, and the next few hours would determine whether humanity would rise to meet this cosmic challenge or fall into the darkness of alien subjugation. The battle for Seaside Cove, and for Earth, raged on. The forest was eerily quiet compared to the chaos of Seaside Cove, the only sounds the crunch of leaves under Tom and Zara's feet and their labored breathing as they ran. The alien woman moved with inhuman grace, easily navigating the dark woods, while Tom stumbled along behind her, his human eyes struggling to adjust to the gloom. "How much further?" Tom gasped, his lungs burning from the exertion. "Not far now," Zara replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "But we must hurry. I fear your distraction won't keep them occupied for long." As if on cue, a distant explosion shook the ground, followed by the fading notes of the final countdown. Zara's musical diversion had apparently run its course. They pressed on, the urgency of their mission driving them forward. Finally, they broke through a dense thicket into a small clearing. There, half buried in the soft earth and covered in foliage, lay Zara's ship. Tom's breath caught in his throat. Despite having seen it once before, the alien craft still filled him with awe. Its sleek, organic design was unlike anything made by human hands, its surface shimmering faintly in the moonlight. Zara approached the ship, placing her hand on its hull. The craft hummed to life, panels sliding open to grant them access. "Quickly," she urged, ushering Tom inside. The interior of the ship was cramped but intricate, filled with pulsing lights and holographic displays that hurt Tom's eyes to look at directly. Zara moved to what he assumed was the control center, her hands flying over the strange interface. "What exactly are we hoping to accomplish here?" Tom asked, feeling out of his depth among the advanced technology. Zara's eyes never left the controls as she responded. "This ship, while small, is equipped with advanced defensive capabilities. If I can bring its systems fully online, we can use it to disrupt the invaders' communication network and possibly even disable some of their larger weapons." Tom nodded, hope looming in his chest. "That could give us the edge we need. How long will it take?" "Not long, but—" Zara's reply was cut short as the ship suddenly rocked violently. Alarms blared, and the holographic displays flashed with urgent warnings Tom couldn't understand. "They found us," Zara said, her voice tight with tension. "The ship's auto-defenses are active, but they won't hold for long. I need more time to complete the reactivation sequence." Tom's jaw set with determination. "Then I'll buy you that time." He hefted Zara's weapon, which he'd brought along. "Tell me what I need to do." Zara looked at him, her kaleidoscope eyes filled with a mixture of gratitude and concern. "There's an external access panel on the port side of the ship. If you can keep them from reaching it, I can finish the sequence." Tom nodded, steeling himself for what was to come. "Consider it done." He paused at the ship's entrance, looking back at Zara. "Hey, if I don't make it back—" "You will," Zara interrupted firmly. "We didn't come this far to fail now." With a final nod, Tom exited the ship, immediately ducking behind a fallen tree as energy blasts scorched the air around him. Through the smoke and chaos, he could make out the forms of several alien soldiers advancing on the ship. Taking a deep breath, Tom raised Zara's weapon and focused his thoughts. A pulse of energy shot forth, striking the lead alien's shield. As before, the shield shattered, leaving the invader vulnerable. Tom didn't waste the opportunity, following up with a barrage of shots from the pistol Jake had given him. The alien fell, but its companions pressed forward, their return fire forcing Tom to scramble for new cover. He was outnumbered and outgunned, but he had one advantage: this was his home turf. He knew these woods like the back of his hand. Using the trees for cover, Tom led the aliens on a deadly game of cat and mouse. He struck quickly, disabling shields and picking off invaders before melting back into the shadows. But for every alien he took down, more seemed to appear. Inside the ship, Zara worked feverishly, her hands a blur over the controls. She could hear the battle raging outside, each explosion and energy blast making her wince. "Come on," she muttered to herself, "just a little longer." Tom was running out of options. He'd been grazed by an energy blast, his left arm hanging uselessly at his side. Zara's weapon was nearly depleted, and he was down to his last few bullets. But he couldn't give up. Too much was riding on this. As he prepared for what he feared might be his last stand, a new sound cut through the chaos of battle, the roar of engines. Tom looked up to see a formation of human fighter jets streaking across the sky, unleashing a barrage of missiles on the alien forces. For a moment, everything seemed to pause as both humans and aliens alike stared in awe at this unexpected development. Then, from the town, came the sound of renewed gunfire and shouts of defiance. The people of Seaside Cove, emboldened by the arrival of reinforcements, were pushing back against their invaders. Tom allowed himself a moment of fierce joy. They weren't alone in this fight anymore. His elation was short-lived, however, as a massive alien, larger than any he'd seen before, burst through the trees. Its armor was scarred and pitted, evidence of the battle it had already been through. As it raised its weapon, Tom knew he was out of time and options. But before the alien could fire, the ground beneath its feet erupted. Zara's ship rose from its hiding place, panels opening to reveal an array of weaponry unlike anything Tom had ever seen. A beam of pure energy lanced out, enveloping the alien soldier. When the light faded, nothing remained but a scorch mark on the forest floor. The ship hovered there, its weapons tracking and firing with deadly precision, clearing the area of invaders in a matter of moments. Then, with a soft hum, a hatch opened and Zara emerged. "It worked," she said, a tired but triumphant smile on her face. "I've tapped into their communication network. We can coordinate with your military now, guide them on how to effectively combat the invasion force." Tom laughed, the sound bordering on hysterical with relief and exhaustion. "Zara, you beautiful alien genius, you've just turned the tide of this war." As if to punctuate his words, the massive alien mothership that had been hovering over Seaside Cove suddenly shuddered. Explosions bloomed across its surface as human fighter jets, now seemingly able to penetrate its defenses, launched attack after attack. "We should get back to the bunker," Zara said, helping Tom to his feet. "There's still much to be done." The scene that greeted them as they emerged from the forest was one of organized chaos. The streets of Seaside Cove had become a battlefield, but now it was the aliens who were on the defensive. Human military forces had arrived in force, bolstering the town's defenders. Jake met them at the entrance to the bunker, his face smeared with soot, but his eyes shining with determination. "Tom, Zara, you're not going to believe what's happening. We're pushing them back." Inside the bunker, Sarah was coordinating with military officials, her voice strong and clear as she relayed information. "We've got reports of successful counterattacks in New York, London, and Beijing. The tide is turning, people." As Zara interfaced with the human communication systems, providing crucial intelligence on alien weaknesses and strategies, Tom took a moment to absorb the enormity of what was happening. In the span of a few days, the world had changed forever. Humanity had faced its greatest challenge and was rising to meet it. But the battle was far from over. The alien mothership, while damaged, was still operational, and reports were coming in of more ships approaching Earth. "We've won the first round," Tom said, addressing the room. "But this is just the beginning. We need to take the fight to them now, before they can regroup." Zara nodded in agreement. "With my ship's technology and your military might, we have a chance to end this invasion here and now, but it will require a coordinated global effort." As plans were made and strategies formed, Tom found himself marveling at the scene before him. Humans and an alien, working together to save Earth. It was something he never could have imagined just a few days ago. The next few hours were a blur of activity. Tom, despite his injury, insisted on joining the front lines. With Zara's weapon recharged and human forces now able to effectively combat the alien technology, they pushed the invaders back street by street. The people of Seaside Cove fought with a ferociousness that surprised even Tom. Shopkeepers wielded hunting rifles with deadly accuracy. Schoolteachers turned their knowledge of local geography into strategic advantages. Even the local theater group got involved, using their prop-making skills to create convincing decoys that drew alien fire. As the sun began to rise over Seaside Cove, the alien forces were in full retreat. The mothership, heavily damaged and unable to maintain its position, began to ascend back into the atmosphere. But Zara wasn't about to let them escape. Using her ship's advanced targeting systems, she guided a final massive strike. Missiles from every available human aircraft streaked towards the alien vessel, joined by a pulse of energy from Zara's ship that seemed to make the very air ripple. The mothership's shields flickered and failed. The missiles struck home, and for a moment, it seemed as if a second sun had bloomed in the sky over Seaside Cove. When the light faded, only debris remained, raining down harmlessly over the ocean. A cheer went up from the defenders, growing in volume as the realization spread. They had won. The alien invasion, at least in this part of the world, had been repelled. Tom found Zara amidst the celebration, her alien features standing out starkly among the human faces. "We did it," he said, his voice hoarse from shouting orders and thick with emotion. Zara nodded, her kaleidoscope eyes shimmering with what Tom realized were tears. "Your people are remarkable, Tom. In all my travels, I've never seen a species fight with such determination, such humanity." As the sun rose fully, bathing the battered but unbroken town of Seaside Cove in golden light, Tom knew that the world would never be the same. The knowledge that they were not alone in the universe, that threats could come from beyond the stars, would change everything. But looking at the faces of his friends and neighbors, seeing the pride and determination there, he also knew that humanity was ready for whatever the cosmos might throw at them next. The battle for Earth was over, and humanity had emerged victorious. The days following the Battle of Seaside Cove, as it came to be known, were a whirlwind of activity. As news spread of the successful defense against the alien invasion, the small coastal town found itself at the center of global attention. Military personnel, government officials, and news crews from around the world descended upon Seaside Cove, all eager to understand how this unlikely group of small-town heroes had turned the tide of an interplanetary war. Tom, still nursing his injured arm, found himself thrust into the role of reluctant spokesman. Alongside Zara, whose presence was now public knowledge, he recounted the events of the past few days to an audience of millions. "We didn't do anything special," Tom insisted during one particularly grueling press conference. "We just refused to give up. That's the thing about humans, we're stubborn like that." Zara, standing beside him, nodded in agreement. "It was that very stubbornness, that indomitable spirit, that drew me to your world in the first place, and it's what saved you in the end." As the immediate crisis passed and the cleanup began, the full scope of what had transpired began to sink in. The invasion had been global, with battles fought in cities and towns across the planet. While many lives had been lost and the destruction was extensive, humanity had emerged victorious everywhere. Reports came in from around the world of ordinary people performing extraordinary feats in defense of their homes. In Tokyo, a group of tech-savvy teenagers had hacked alien communication systems, sowing confusion among the invaders. In Rio de Janeiro, samba schools had used their elaborate parade floats as mobile fortresses, their drummers' rhythms disrupting alien targeting systems. In Nairobi, wildlife conservationists had employed their knowledge of animal behavior to predict and counter alien movements through the savannah. Each story reinforced what Tom and the people of Seaside Cove had discovered, that humanity's greatest strength lay in its diversity, creativity, and unwavering determination. A week after the invasion, as life in Seaside Cove was slowly returning to a semblance of normalcy, Tom found Zara standing on the beach, gazing up at the stars. He joined her, wincing slightly as he sat down on the sand. "Penny for your thoughts?" he asked. Zara turned to him, her kaleidoscope eyes reflecting the starlight. "I was just thinking about how different the sky looks from here. Your constellations, your stories about the stars, they're all new to me." Tom nodded, following her gaze upward. "I suppose we'll have to come up with some new stories now, ones that include you and your people." Zara was quiet for a moment before speaking. "Tom, there's something I need to tell you. Something I should have said from the beginning." Tom felt a knot form in his stomach. "What is it?" "The invasion force, they weren't my people, not exactly. They're a splinter group, extremists who believe in galactic domination. But there are others out there, peaceful civilizations who want nothing more than to coexist and share knowledge." Tom absorbed this information, his mind reeling with the implications. "So, there's a whole universe of alien life out there, peaceful aliens." Zara nodded. "Yes. And now that Earth has successfully defended itself, now that you've proven yourselves as a species capable of standing up to cosmic threats, well, many of those civilizations will be interested in making contact." Tom let out a low whistle. That's a lot to take in. Are we ready for that? For full-on galactic diplomacy?" Zara smiled, placing a hand on Tom's shoulder. "I think you're more ready than you know. Your people have already shown an incredible capacity for adaptation and acceptance. Look at how quickly Seaside Cove embraced me, a literal alien." As they sat there on the beach, discussing the possibilities that lay ahead, they were interrupted by the arrival of Jake and Sarah. "There you are," Sarah said, slightly out of breath. "We've been looking all over for you too. You need to come back to the bunker. You need to see this for yourselves." Exchanging curious glances, Tom and Zara followed their friends back to what had become the de facto command center for Seaside Cove's reconstruction efforts. Inside, they found a hive of activity centered around a large screen. On the screen was an image that made Tom's breath catch in his throat. It showed Earth, beautiful and blue, but it was the foreground that drew everyone's attention. A fleet of ships, far larger than the invasion force they had faced, was approaching the planet. "Are those?" Tom began, unable to finish the question. Zara stepped forward, her eyes wide with recognition. "They're peaceful," she said, her voice filled with emotion. "That's the insignia of the Galactic Confederation. They're here to help." As if on cue, the screen flickered, and a face appeared, distinctly alien, yet somehow radiating warmth and friendliness. The being spoke, its words translated in real time. "People of Earth, we come in peace and with admiration. Your recent defense against the Scourge invasion has not gone unnoticed. We, a Galactic Confederation, extend our hand in friendship and offer our assistance in rebuilding and preparing for your new role in the cosmic community." The bunker erupted in a mix of cheers, gasps, and excited chatter. Tom turned to Zara, seeing his own mix of excitement and apprehension mirrored in her eyes. "Looks like we've got our work cut out for us," he said with a wry smile. Over the next few months, Earth underwent a transformation unlike anything in human history. With the help of the Galactic Confederation, devastated areas were rebuilt using advanced alien technology. But more than that, humanity found itself on a crash course in cosmic politics and culture. Seaside Cove, as the site of the pivotal battle and home to Zara, became a hub of this new era of human-alien cooperation. The old bunker was expanded and transformed into an interstellar diplomatic center, with representatives from dozens of alien races coming to meet and negotiate with Earth's leaders. Tom, much to his own surprise, found himself at the center of it all. His straightforward, down-to-earth approach to the incredible situations he found himself in made him an ideal intermediary between humans and aliens alike. One sunny afternoon, about 6 months after the invasion, Tom stood on the newly constructed observation deck of the Seaside Cove Interstellar Center, formerly known as the Bunker. Beside him stood Zara, Jake, and Sarah, all of them watching as the first Earth-made starship prepared for its maiden voyage. "Did you ever imagine we'd be here?" Sarah asked, her journalist's notepad long since replaced by a high-tech alien datapad. "6 months ago, we were just a small town on the coast. Now we're helping to lead humanity into a new age." Jake shook his head, a bemused smile on his face. "If you told me back then that I'd be heading up Earth's first interstellar security force, I'd have said you were crazy. But here we are." Tom nodded, his gaze fixed on the sleek starship. It was a testament to human ingenuity and alien cooperation, a symbol of how far they'd come in such a short time. "It's been a hell of a ride," he said, "but I've got a feeling we're just getting started." Zara, who had been quiet, suddenly spoke up. "You know, when I first crashed here, I thought I was on a one-way mission. I never imagined," she trailed off, her kaleidoscope eyes shimmering with emotion. Tom put an arm around her shoulders, a gesture that had become natural over the months of working closely together. "You never imagined you'd find a new home." Zara nodded. "More than that, a new family, a new purpose." As they stood there, watching the starship begin its historic journey, Tom reflected on everything that had led to this moment. The fear and chaos of the invasion, the desperate battle to save not just Seaside Cove, but the entire planet, the joy of victory, and the wonder of first contact with peaceful alien races. It had been a journey beyond anything he could have imagined. But as he looked at his friends, human and alien alike, he realized that the most important things hadn't changed. The spirit of Seaside Cove, the determination and heart that had seen them through the invasion, was still there. It had simply grown, expanded to embrace a larger cosmic perspective. The starship rose higher, its engines flaring brilliantly against the blue sky. As it disappeared from view, heading towards the stars that had once seemed so distant and unreachable, Tom felt a surge of pride and hope. Humanity had faced its greatest challenge and emerged stronger for it. They had proven themselves on a galactic stage, earning their place among the stars. And while the future was uncertain, filled with both promise and potential dangers, Tom knew one thing for certain: whatever the universe had in store, they would face it together. As the small group of unlikely heroes turned to head back inside, ready to face whatever new challenges awaited them, Tom took one last look at the sky. The stars were just becoming visible as dusk fell, and for a moment, he could almost imagine he saw the starship up there, carrying the hopes and dreams of humanity out into the cosmos. The girl who had claimed to be an alien had turned out to be so much more: a harbinger of a new age, a friend, and a bridge between worlds. And the small town that had doubted her had become the center of a new chapter in human history. As they stepped back into the bustling interstellar center, the air filled with a mix of human and alien languages, Tom smiled to himself. The invasion had been repelled, but the real adventure was just beginning. Humanity had taken its first steps into a larger universe, and Seaside Cove was leading the way. The stars, once distant and mysterious, now beckoned with the promise of new discoveries, new challenges, and new friendships. And humanity, with its unique blend of determination, creativity, and adaptability, was ready to answer that call. The story of the alien invasion would be told for generations to come, but it would be remembered not just as a tale of war and survival, but as the moment when humanity proved itself ready to join a larger cosmic community. It was the end of one chapter, but the beginning of an even greater adventure. And as the sun set on another day in Seaside Cove, the first town on Earth to welcome a friendly alien and repel an invasion, Tom knew that whatever the future held, they would face it the same way they had faced every challenge so far, together, with courage, creativity, and an unwavering belief in the potential of humanity. The universe was vast and full of wonders, and humanity was finally ready to explore it.